Hello and welcome to the show. Actually, this is fantastic. Great to see you here. I've just gone live for about 20 minutes and we didn't record any audio. Now, I wasn't sure whether I could tell whether we were recording audio, and now I can see what's the difference. So I can see the actual little meter there. So fantastic to have you here. This is Consulting Talk Live, which is where we take your consulting questions about your consulting practice and answer them live. So that could be anything about like how to develop your business, how to grow your business, how to move into the space, maybe from a service, you want to become a consulting practice. There's so many different questions that we take, and you can give us those questions so we can answer them here live at consultingquestions.com. Right, pretty easy one to follow. So today's question is from Anthony, and he asks, let me just read it so I get it correct. One of the greatest challenges is what to call yourself because consulting carries a lot of baggage. Now, there's lots of different bits in that question, right? So let's talk to the baggage piece first. I think there are consulting memes, but there are also memes about just about any profession, which, in this one, if we were to call out the things that people would say are the negatives around consulting. Yeah, consultants, no one knows what consultants do. Consultants use jargon type phrases. They cost a lot of money, and we're not sure if they're if they're adding value. But there are those type of negatives in just about every industry. I work with real estate agents. Do I call myself a real estate agent because there's negative connotations? Do I call myself a financial advisor? There's negative connotations. Do I call myself a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever? There's always some form of negative connotation. So the question is, what is then the positive connotations? All right. So number one, we've got the expensive side on one side. Well, the expensive side in the positive is a really good one too, because there's an expectation, if that is the case, that people, when they engage a consultant, have an expectation that they're going to spend some money, which means the different than let's say we've got a consultant, we've got a counselor. A lot of people going to a counselor, sometimes they think it's a free service, depending on the healthcare system. Sometimes they go, all right, well, that's in the hundreds of dollars because that tends to be how their experience has gone. But with the consultants, it's in the thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, right? So there are some connotations around just about every profession, but it's a question about whether that affects us and whether it affects the client that we're engaging with. And I think that it doesn't. It does. The only reason it affects us is if we're holding on to that negative connotation. So really, the place that I see this happening the most is where someone's been a small business person and they're transitioning from a service into the consulting space. They didn't see themselves as a consultant previously, and now they're seeing themselves as a consultant. There's two things to that. Maybe one, they may have had experiences with a consultant. Maybe it was bad consulting because there are bad, actors in every space. Maybe they had a poor experience, and so they don't want to call themselves the thing they had the poor experience with. But more so, it tends to be around a small bit of imposter syndrome, whether that be conscious or unconscious, being that I don't identify as a consultant yet. And that usually is because they haven't been trained in the consulting. They have a depth of experience and they have a depth of expertise, and maybe there's decades worth there, but they haven't learned the consulting methodology. They haven't learned the processes and the frameworks and the tools that enable a consultant to get high results for their clients. And so because they haven't done that before, they don't identify as that thing. Now, you do it enough times, you work with enough people, you have enough methodology and methodology and tools and processes underneath that you are then getting results. And then with those results comes this identity that emerges from you. You go, all right, I'm now getting the results of a consultant, therefore I am. And I think that's the biggest piece in particular about what to call yourself. Now, interestingly, though, back when I started, it was before I was a consultant, I was in the advertising space and I'd work with big brands and what have you. So we do advertising and brand management, things like that. And in that space, in the corporate identity world, there's business cards and brochures and all these different things. And what I discovered is the value of a business card wasn't about the stock or the quality or what was even written on it, really, as long as I had contact details that were easy to find and understand. It wasn't about the colors. It wasn't about the shape. It wasn't even about the thickness and the GSM of the card that it was on. It was actually more about, did the person who was actually going to own the card, so person who was going to hold on to it and then give it out, ideally, did they believe in it? Did they identify with it? Did they like it? Yeah. And so if they liked their card and they liked what was written on the card, then they would give it out to everybody, which means that it's not even about the giving of cards. Just so you know, in a networking situation, you want to receive cards so that you can do things with them. You're proactively, you have the contact details. But the giving of the cards is more a case of starting conversations, right? So I have all these cards in my pocket. I want to give all these cards out. Therefore, I need to contact or connect with enough of these people so that I've got people to give it to. And so if they fully believe in their website, they're going to share it with everybody. If they fully believe in their business card, they're going to share it with everybody. And so if they don't believe in their website, they're going to not tell anyone. If they don't believe in their business card, they're not going to give it to anyone. And so in doing that, they get less exposure. They get less engagement in those conversations, which are the point of sale for any consultant. And the outcome is less opportunity to have consulting opportunities in front of you, right? So less opportunities for opportunities. So really, it doesn't matter what you call yourself. I think if you start calling yourself things that people don't understand, that doesn't benefit you at all. Most people understand that a consultant comes in to advise in some sense. And so if you look at the word consultant, you go, where does it come from? Well, it comes from the Latin consulere. Consulere means to give counsel. And so ideally, like, someone comes to you for your counsel. Yeah. So that's what a consultant is. But you could be a consultant, you could be a coach, you could be a mentor, you could be a guide, right? You could be any of these things, and it wouldn't matter as long as you believed in it enough to actually share that this is what I am, or this is who I am, and this is the sort of work that I do with individuals. Now, if you call yourself a strategic focuser, right, which is kind of a description of a consultant, how does that help you? Well, I guess you're strategic and that you create focus, sure, but what does that mean? What does that even look like? How does that work? And so that's the challenge, is coming up with these creative ideas for what people call themselves. And I see a lot of people in the consulting space, and I love these guys. There's like the profit first individuals, people who are helping people with the profit first system, which I fully believe in. I think it's a fantastic system, but a lot of them are trained accountants, but they want to step out of the accountancy space because they want to be advisors. So they're calling themselves, the wealth mentor, and profit compass, right? And they call themselves these sort of names, and it sometimes it sparks curiosity, and people go, well, what does that person do? And that's useful, I guess. But a lot of the time, people get confused. Actually, just thinking out loud on this, I think I would prefer people to ask the question, what does that look like, or what does that mean, rather than give them a statement and they go, oh, well, I know what that means. So I go, all right, I'm a dentist. Oh, well, I don't need to know anymore because I've been to the dentist. I know what that looks like. But I guess if I was a profit navigator, whatever it might be, they'll go, oh, what does that mean? Right. So it allows at least the curiosity side of things. I don't mind that too much. This is coffee, by the way, so it's way too early to drink. Not drink coffee, but what you thought it was. So the opportunity for you as a consultant is to really not care too much about the title. I called myself a strategist for many years because the work that I do tends to be strategic. But I am a consultant. I'm a mentor. And I think of myself as a guide, in that I can't do the work for you, because if I do, I disable you. It's my job to help you take steps, help you make decisions. I'm there to support you, but at the end of the day, you need to take the step and you need to make the decision, right? So we teach a lot of these things in the Forge and the Consulting Guild. We call them outcome expertise. And one of the things that we're developing more, and we will be developing a lot more, is the methodologies that the consultant uses to effectively get those outcomes. You've got expertise, but it's about outcome expertise, which means that you've got a depth of expertise, decades of experience, decades of an understanding about the challenges and problems that your clients face. You know how to get them results. But what is the process of getting them results without doing the work? That's the key. How do you do it without doing the work? Because if you do the work, I see a lot of contractor style consultants come in, they become a part of the organization they're working with. And then if they leave, all the benefit that was within the organization while they were there gets removed. And so they become a cog in the machine, and then the cog's removed and the machine breaks down. And so I think it's important in this day and age to not become a cog in the machine of your client. And it's for you to enable them to get the result. And so what does that mean? How do you do that? Well, I think the key with today's consultant is that you're not just one modality. Consulting is a modality. It's like telling people what needs to be done. It's identifying what needs to be done, what steps needs to be done. So you've got consulting, you've got mentoring, you've got coaching, you've got you've even got counseling to a degree, but you've got all these different modalities of the way you act. And I think today's consultant, especially with artificial intelligence being in there, needs to be, and I'll talk about that in just a second, because I did some fantastic stuff with AI just before this session. But today's consultant needs to be like water. We need to be able to flow through our methodologies so that we can enable the result. Because if we're so stuck in our ways and so stuck in our process, and we're so trying to productize because someone's told us that productization is the fastest way to get leverage in our business, that we're going to lock ourselves into the inability to help certain people because they're slightly different. The inability to work with different industries because they have a different way of entering the problem. Even just the process itself. There are a lot of people who have massive expertise, like real deep experts in an area. And so they know the problem so well. And because they know the problem so well, they can diagnose you instantly when you walk in the door. And they will know the three things or the three options that you could move to. And so they start talking about, all right, well, you're in this situation. You need to go to one of these three places. And the person that they're working with isn't ready to take the step. So that's one of the biggest pieces of actually getting these outcome expertise or getting expertise into the outcomes, is that helping people to take the steps, identifying where they are, where they need to go, getting their buy-in, that they're ready to do that transformation, that they're actually ready to take that journey, and then helping them take one step at a time. One small step that is going to get them the rest of the way on their path. So symptoms in particular is the key to that. Understanding what is the problem they perceive, even though you know because of your expertise that the problem is much deeper than that. It's at a much deeper level. So yes, we know that stuff, but hold back. We only care about understanding the client in front of us so we can understand where they're starting from. Where is their starting point? How do we meet them where they're at if we don't take that time to understand where they're at? By the way, if you have questions, whether now or whether you've got them in the for the future, put it in the comments or go to consultingquestions.com and you can actually give us questions there. But you could also put it into the chat as well, anytime, whether you're live or whether you're watching it later. So we engage someone in that symptom. We go, all right, well, this is the problem you see, correct? Yes. Would you like to solve that problem? Yes, I would. Is now the right time to do that? Is there a priority to get it done? Yes, there is. All right, let's talk about where you'd like to go. Then they're engaged in the process. They're ready to take the step and they're ready to do what needs to be done. Back in the day, a consultant would create, and still they're still out there doing this. Here is a strategic plan, and they go and they interview a business, and they do some sort of 360 assessment of the business. They go away, they write a strategic plan, and they submit it, and the job's done. Two really important things happen. Number one, it's the consultant's plan, not the client's plan, because they weren't involved in the creating of it. So there's no ownership for the client. You need to have ownership with the client. Otherwise, they won't take the steps that they need to take, because they're your steps, not their steps. They're not bought into that process yet. All right. So that happens. The other issue is that often the assessment, even the 360 assessment of an organization, doesn't look at the personalities and the individuals that are going to do the work. They just go, well, from my experience in my past, like these steps should be quite easy to take. But if the organization doesn't have experience with taking those steps, if it doesn't already have the skill set in the business, or it doesn't have the attitudes in the business, then it won't take the steps, which means you've got all these strategic plans that don't work. There is a massive opportunity for consultants to get huge retainers and to have ongoing payments with clients by just being there after the plan has been created to coach them, mentor them, consult them through the process to get to the result. And if you're a consultant who is just doing the strategic work, I invite you to consider the idea that there is a bunch of different options in how you can form a retainer after the fact, which is going to be far more valuable and enable the client to get far better outcomes. So I'll talk about the AI stuff in just a second. But that was the question from Anthony. It's like, do I call myself a consultant? Well, call yourself whatever you want, as long as you're actually going to start conversations with people, because that's massively important. But you will feel more like a consultant when you have the methodologies of the consultant and understand what it is to help people get those consulting outcomes. Now, if you come from a management consulting background, if you've worked with big four consulting companies, then you probably will feel like a consultant. But even those big four consulting companies, what tends to happen in there is like 2% of the people inside the organization are creating the value, and there's a lot of people doing busy work. If we're running a solo practice, or us and a small team in our consulting business, and you can still have multi-million-dollar business that's you and just a few team members. But if you're running that sort of thing, then getting those results becomes very, very important, like massively important, because you're not relying on other people. But at the same time, you're controlling your own destiny. You're not an employee anymore. So call yourself what you want, but get to work. Understand what it is to have outcome expertise. Understand what it is to actually get people results. AI. Massive things happening in AI. Hedra. That's a fun program. So Hedra, and I'll put it in the chat actually, so that you got the spelling of it. Hedra is a very cool program that enables you to take an image and then turn it into a video. And so I'm coming up to I'm not going to give away what I'm doing because I'm doing this live tomorrow. I'm doing a summit for the Institute of Management Consultants, and I've done a little AI thing where I've got ChatGPT to create a script. I've then taken that script to 11 Labs. So that's 11 Labs. And 11 Labs enables you to put a voice to the script. And so I've got that audio transcription basically. And I've got a picture of the AI model that I want to use. And so I just got ChatGPT to create a picture of a professional looking 36-year-old woman with a minimalist corporate background behind her. So I get a still image. I've got the audio, and then I put it through Hedra, and now that person is talking using the script and the voice that I used. Now, it's not amazing, but when you see it, you go, oh, wow, that's come a long way in a very short period of time. We've got very good at that. So I might talk about later what I actually do, what I did with it, because I don't want to give it away just in case anyone is watching this who's going to be there. But it's a lot of fun. And so I'm a creative at the end of the day. Like, I come from a creative background. I've been an artist in different areas. I'm a blacksmith. That's one of the things that I do. So I love the creative quality of it. I am someone who can draw and paint and do all those sort of things. So there's a lot of people thinking that, from my point of view, I should not like artificial intelligence because it's taking the creativity away. But there is an element of combination and collaboration with the tool that enables you to get to results a lot faster, and enables you to do things that you haven't done before. The tools have changed. I learned Photoshop in the mid-90s, and everyone thought Photoshop was the devil because it basically took away airbrushing. And airbrushing was just a laborious technique that you would use to create beautiful images. We now have Photoshop, which sped up that process. And this is back in the day where Photoshop didn't have layers, didn't have history. You couldn't go back in time. So you had to do multiple saves, multiple saves, multiple saves. But it didn't kill the artists. It accelerated the artists. And the unfortunate side effect, which is kind of fortunate for the client, is it sped everything up. So when I first got into the game, we used to courier everything to people. And so we would produce a piece of content. We would courier it to the client. It'd take, an hour or 2 hours to get there. They'd look at it, read it over, make changes or whatever it might be, put on notes, and then courier it back. And so that gave us time to go breathe for a second before we got a response and had to jump into something else. Then email came out at the end of the day, end of the 90s. And suddenly the courier stuff didn't need to happen. We would send something, instantly get there within moments, and then they make the changes. It comes back in moments. And that like sped up the industry like crazy. And so I know so many people who originally were, I guess, finished artists that were in the graphic design space, who then, when that acceleration point happened with email, they didn't like the business anymore because it was too fast. I liked it because that's how I do stuff. I like to do move really fast. And so artificial intelligence is just doing that again. It's just accelerating what we've got. Yes, it samples things. Yes, it samples things from the world. So did Photoshop. So did the manipulation of photos, bringing photos together, and all the other things that happen. The video killed the radio star. All these things. Oh well. The world moves on. It doesn't mean we can't use those original technologies. Radio still exists. It's not what it was once, but it's moved into the podcasting realm, which is actually bigger and better than it ever was. Moving in with video and both of those things coming together. So we've got more of a collaboration of video and audio. So I think that understanding how AI can improve what you're doing, understanding what are the things that it can do that you weren't able to do before, and just starting to understand that this is a new tool in everything that we're doing. And for many people, there are people out there that go, I don't use AI. I've literally spoken to people in this profession that say, I don't use artificial intelligence. And then I ask them about the tools they use in a software sense, and they tell me about things that I know are now all AI driven. So it's very hard. There's a big moral and ethical conversation with artificial intelligence, but that's part of what we're going to be having that conversation tomorrow. How to remain high touch in a high tech world is really what the summit is all about. So maybe I'll fill you in afterwards. We'll come back and I'll give you some input. But this session today was very much about, what do I call myself? Do I call myself a consultant? I think the key in this day and age with artificial intelligence, with the way the world moves, is that you want to be like water. Don't get so stuck in the modality of what you do. Call yourself whatever you need to call yourself so that you'll actually go out and have conversations, but don't get so stuck in the modality. You at some point you're going to need to be a coach, which means you can't even like tell them anything necessarily. It's about drawing the resources and the potential out of them. Right, so helping them do with what they've got, mentoring, showing them a path traveled, giving them the confidence to take those steps themselves. The consulting methodology of like diagnosing and making recommendation, counseling, even learning the skills of a counselor are truly effective. But it's interesting. I talk to counselors that are making the step from counselor to consultant. There's some of the most difficult mental hurdles for these people to get over, which is usually around price. I've been charging at most, like some of them will say, I charge a lot of money. I charge $250 an hour. But the consultants, creating as much value, are charging $1,000 and more an hour. Right. And that's, put hourly rates out. That shouldn't even be part of the conversation. We're creating value. And so there is an identity thing that gets into people's head around who they are and what they need to be. don't stress so much about identity, because if you tie your identity to your modality, to the methodology that you use, you are going to limit yourself. So call yourself your name. I'm Russell, and I enable consultants to grow successful consulting practices. All right. I use whatever methodology I need to use. I use whatever modalities I need to use. I use whatever is going to engage a client into the process so that they can take the steps, and that I can help them resource themselves so that they will have that as a piece that enables them to do that into the future, even without me. Right? That's the whole game. But if you've got questions to ask about anything to do with consulting, go to consultingquestions.com. Type in your questions there. We'll read them out on the show. If you don't have to put your name in, you can write anonymous or whatever you want. But if you want to have your name read out, definitely put your contact details in there, and we'll let you know when the show airs. My name's Russell Pearson. I help consultants run successful consulting practices. We do that through the Forge business program, which really is about accelerating your business. So when you're ready to double your business, that's the key. That's the one. And we have the Consulting Guild, which is like the community. The Consulting Guild is community education, resources, and a fantastic conversation about the evolving world of consulting business. Till next time, stay passionate, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.